Welcome to a special playoff edition of 805 Sports Talk. We're excited that the CIF Southern Section football playoffs are here, and we're going to start the show with Santa Maria's game against Carpinteria. They host the Warriors Friday night. It's the first CIF playoff appearance for Santa Maria in football since 2001, so that's a 16-year playoff drought that the Saints have ended, and they're trying to end a 23-year playoff winless streak. If they beat Carpinteria, that'll be the first playoff win since a 1-9 Santa Maria team won at top-ranked Culver City in 1994. Lorenzo, I'll start with you. Do you think the Saints, they are facing a tough Carpinteria team that is 6-4, but it is Division 12. That's probably a good fit for them division-wise. What do you expect out of the Saints Friday night?
They're red hot, and they're red hot at the right time. I mean, that Nipomo game, obviously I wasn't there, but I could tell the emotions of that victory, and I think that right there is going to ride into the home game. I mean, it's one thing to wrap up your league title, but now you have a home game in the first round of the playoffs. So, I mean, that just adds that extra chip on Santa Maria's shoulder, and I just think the stars are aligned for the Saints to come out with a victory in this one.
Yeah, I was at practice on Monday. They seemed relaxed, confident. It was pretty much business as usual. They did a film session. They had practice a little bit later than they normally would have, but it seems like they're in their routine. They're ready. I think this game is a little tougher than you would think at first glance. Carpinteria, it has been beat up usually by San Ynez, lost 63-0. We don't expect much out of Carpinteria, but they are improved this year at 6-4. So I think the Saints are definitely going to have to work for it, but I would expect them to be the favorites in that matchup, and I think they are expected to win Friday night, but it's going to be kind of a crazy atmosphere, I would expect, at Santa Maria, their first playoff game since 2001 and the first playoff game since 1994 at home. Kenny, you were on hand for that win over Nipomo. What did you see out of Santa Maria Friday night, coming back from a 19-0 deficit? What do you expect to see from them Friday against Carpinteria?
One of the reasons why I picked Santa Maria was because Nipomo had won 4 straight. I thought it was hard for any team to win 5 straight, and now Santa Maria has won 4 straight. But I think Santa Maria is in a little different position. They actually really physically dominated Nipomo in the second half. They scored 41 of the last 47 points. I think they're ready. I think it will be a close game, but I'm going with Santa Maria. I think they have found a way to get their inside running game going to take a little of the pressure off Blake Truitt. Their defense has struggled at times, but the defense played really well against the decent Nipomo offense in the second half, and Santa Maria does have a pass rush. I'm going with them in a tight one.
Yeah, Bobby Ruiz has done a really good job to get that between the tackles running game going. He had over 100 yards last week, over 700 yards on the season, 7 touchdowns. Truitt has 18 rushing touchdowns on the season. I think he's accounted for almost 70% of the offensive yards that Santa Maria has produced this year. You talk about that pass rush. Gerardo Azul's been great. Gabriel Bravo can also get after the quarterback. I think they have about 25 combined sacks between those two guys. So I think they will, apply some pressure to Carpinteria's offense. Elliot, what do you expect to see out of Santa Maria?
Well, I think it took them a little while to get over the loss of Isaiah Garcia, is it, as their star running back, and now they've done that. So now they got to take the next step. And I thought last week they were a little nervous coming in, and when they got their footing, they just blew Nipomo away after that. So I think that's their biggest concern is getting nervous. It's the playoffs. It's something none of these kids have experienced before. If they can get over the jitters early and get a couple hits under their belts, and remember, it's just football, I think they can dominate this game. I agree, Carpinteria is much improved, but you can't count those Warriors out. They're a good squad. It'll be a tough test. I think Santa Maria has what it takes to get by them, but I'm just a little concerned about their early play. If they can take a couple hits, shake off the nerves, I think they can focus and then win this game.
Yeah, and the Saints were a little disappointed in their seeding. I believe they're the 8th seed in that division. Dan Ellington thought they could have been a little higher. So if they do win Friday night, they will likely play the top seed in Division 12. So that's a tough road for them, but I would urge people to go out to that game Friday night at Santa Maria High School. Their first playoff appearance in 16 years. They're going for the first playoff win in 23 years. So you don't see that too often. And with this senior group that Santa Maria has, you might not see that for a while at Santa Maria High School. I know the program is trending in the right direction, but don't miss that opportunity to see a playoff football game at Santa Maria High School. You don't see those too often. A place where you do see a lot of playoff football games is Houck Stadium, where the Lompoc Braves will host Camarillo Friday night. I think that's a tough first-round matchup for the Braves, who are, I think, the 3rd seed in Division III. Camarillo, we know, is a tough team, had that great state run in 2015. Lompoc had to beat Camarillo in the first round, I think 2014. Lorenzo, you've been researching that matchup and their little history that those two programs have. What are you expecting Friday night at Houck Stadium?
This game's going to be a lot closer than what people think, and here's the reason why. In looking at Camarillo's 5-5 record, all 5 of their losses were decided by 15 points or less, including games against Rio Mesa, against Moore Park, a last-second field goal against Oaks Christian, and then a Hail Mary pass against Westlake. So Andrew Jones also pointed this out as well, that this is a Camarillo team that clearly operates under the looks can be deceiving kind of mantra, because this is a team that could have very easily been 9-1, and they're a very young group. So as it is, when I look back at that 2014 matchup, I mean, it was actually a backup quarterback. You probably remember Joseph Asagueda, who actually bailed out the Braves that game. And granted, that was a Braves team that was injury depleted. They're healthier now, but this Camarillo group, I would imagine that they're going to come with an edge. Yep. They're going to want to shock the Division III bracket by pulling out the upsets. So, I feel like this is one of those games where it'll be close for 3 quarters. Then you see Lompoc pull away.
Do you think Lompoc may be underestimated a little bit? Do you think that's a tougher matchup than what they deserve? Perhaps think CIF saw them, kind of play a close game against Ynez, but they did go 10-0. They've been dominant throughout the season, but their first-round matchup you would expect to be a little easier than a Camarillo team that could easily be 9-1, like you said. Do you think the CIF kind of gave them a little bit of a curveball with the tougher matchup?
Yeah, but they also, let's keep this in mind, they gave them a curveball by moving them to Division III and keeping Corona Del Mar in Division IV. So there's already that curveball right there, and now you have Camarillo, and then even if Lompoc does win, there's a possibility they will play against a Villa Park team that went 9-1 during the regular season. So it already gets tough for Lompoc.
Yeah, definitely a tough road ahead for the Braves if they do get past Camarillo in that first round. Kenny, I think you were on hand when Joseph Asagueda came in as a backup. I think he was injured Torrey Sims was injured, and then Asagueda came in. And they were down early to Camarillo, and we were seeing updates, and we were all kind of worried. And then Asagueda came in, had a huge game, throwing for over 300 yards, and we were kind of shocked. You never see a Lompoc quarterback throwing for 300 yards.
He had his game of the season. He had the game of his career.
Yeah,
and that did help bail them out. This is one of their toughest first-round matchups since that one, and when Andrew Jones was actually a quarterback at Lompoc, I forget the young man's name, but they went against the South Torrance running back who wound up at USC. He scored something like 5 touchdowns.
Chauncey Washington.
Right, Chauncey Washington. Andrew said with a laugh after the game, that guy's awesome. Lompoc won by a touchdown. And 1 year recently, Lompoc was just really too banged up to have a chance against Arroyo Grande and got beaten in the first round. Other than those, this is about the first round matchup, toughest first round matchup for them that I can remember. I do have them winning. I think that Camarillo won't be a pushover, but I think Lompoc will eventually push them over.
Yeah, they have been tested in early round games before in the playoffs, and they found a way to win. So I would kind of expect Lompoc to be challenged. I think it's going to be a close game, but they usually do have the players and the ability and just the well-coached team to make those plays in the end, especially when it matters.
I think looking more in depth at this Camarillo team, it's funny because this Camarillo team looks like that 2014 team. I mean, it was predominantly juniors and sophomores, and then the following year was that state run. I mean, their best running back option is a sophomore, and then their best quarterback option is a junior, already getting comparisons to Jake Constantine.
Yeah, I think Lompoc probably has an experience edge then with Lompoc's pretty senior heavy. They do have some great talent in the lower grades, but they are pretty experienced. They are pretty senior heavy, making the semifinals last year with that team that lost to Corona Del Mar. Elliot, what do you expect out of the Braves Friday night?
Well, I think that experience is going to help them. It's the Camarillo's not going to be a pushover. Here's what you got. You got a young team versus an experienced team, but you got a young, battle-tested team. I mean, as the games that Lorenzo mentioned, they played some tough schools. You know, we see St. Joe does it every year. The preseason, they schedule some monster programs, and this year they pulled off a win and a couple of good losses. And by the time you get to the league season, now you're ready to go. One of the things that could work against Lompoc is all those blowouts. They really haven't been tested except the San Ynez game. So in most of their games, they've been able to seat the starters. People talk about these blowouts, these 70-point wins, so you take the starters out and you get the young guys some experience, which is good down the road. But now the starters have to play the whole 48 minutes. They could be tired at the end, where Camarillo's had to play their kids all the way through every game. So that could work to Camarillo's advantage. But I just think the experience that the Braves had, the coaching that Andrew Jones brings with his staff, the continuity of that program, that he just keeps reloading, and they make deep playoff runs. I think it's going to be a good game. I think Lompoc's going to win it. It's going to be closer than the blowouts we've seen all year. And it's a good matchup for them to get their heads on straight for the rest of the playoffs. It wouldn't do them any good to have a 77-7 win in the first round. A tough opponent, and Camarillo's going to be that. I think Camarillo might be a year away from another big run. But I think Lompoc is going to have its hands full, but will win the game, and then it'll do them a good job, do them well for the next round. But they can't be looking ahead, because Camarillo could beat them.
Yeah, so there you go. We all are picking Santa Maria to win, and we all expect Lompoc to win in their first round games. St. Joseph also has a home game, but they're taking on a Harvard-Westlake team that I think would probably be the favorite in that matchup. Wolverines have a solid season. That's a Division V first round game. The Knights, second seed out of the LPL, do get a home game, but I think it's going to be a tough one for them. They've advanced to the quarterfinals the last couple years, losing to Calabasas last year and a tough matchup. But do you think this is a year, Lorenzo, that the Knights will advance again, or do you think they're going to have too much to go against Harvard-Westlake Friday night?
I feel like they have too much to go against. I mean, maybe not as much as Calabasas last year, but I mean, you have to wonder how much emotion is left on St. Joseph's side after that victory against San Ynez. And from what I've seen, from what we've seen all season long, is that St. Joseph looks good one week, but then the next week they lay a goose egg, like against Lompoc. But you know, we have to figure out what kind of Knights team we'll see, and then I mean, the fact Mason Bealey may not even be in the lineup as well, that already
he won't be.
Yeah, that already hurts your offense, especially with a possession target. But you know, this will be a tough one. I'm hoping it's a close game, but I see the edge going to Harvard-Westlake.
Yeah, I think the Wolverines are 8-2. Usually those schools down there feature a little bit more top-end talent than that we see down here. Usually when we're hosting teams from Southern California, you'll be doing some research and see this guy's got offers from USC, Cal, UCLA, all that stuff. We don't have too many guys with offers over here, but our teams sometimes do match up well with some of those Southern California teams. Kenny, do you think the Knights can hang with Harvard-Westlake Friday night?
I think this will be at least as close as any first round playoff game for any of our teams. I would not be surprised if it goes to the wire. I think I had the Wolverines winning by 1, but I usually don't pay that much attention to score spreads when I'm picking teams. I just pick the teams. But I would not surprise me if it goes to the wire. Unfortunately, losing Mason Bealey, I feel, will be a big hit because he added a lot of depth to a deep receiving corps. And it's just, let's face it, often it's a better, not that this brand of football is weak, but I do feel it is often just a bit of a stronger brand of football down there. I have Harvard-Westlake in a close one.
Yeah.
I went to the St. Joe practice yesterday, and I talked to the kids, and I spoke with Harvard-Westlake's coach, Ruggles, over the phone for about a half an hour. And both teams are up for this game. Of course, you would think that being its playoffs. St. Joe's practicing fast. They do play after play after play. They want to be able to play this game fast, minimize the mistakes, and they think they can win. Mason Bealey's going to be out this week. I talked to him yesterday. He doesn't want his career to end with him on the sidelines, so he's urging his teammates to win this one so he can get back in the game for next week, so he's a week away. They got a lot of talent. You got Dino Maldonado as a quarterback. You can never count them out when he can just throw, and even though Bealey's out, they've still got a lot of receivers on that team that can step up. Bealey is also a key on the defense, so they need to replace him on defense, and that's where his loss may hurt even more, because they've got a number of wide receivers that can just step in and you know, they didn't want me to give away any of their secrets, but what they do is what they do. They've got a strong running game. You know, Maldonado is not a running quarterback. He runs when he has to, but he's got guys that can run the ball. He's really an accurate passer. But Harvard-Westlake has some really good kids. You talked about they've got an offensive tackle who is already committed to USC next year, and they will line him up in the backfield. They'll give him the ball. They'll put him in the slot and throw it to him. And he's a monster. He's 6'5", 250 or so. But primarily he's a lineman for them. But he's very versatile. They've got a running back who's going to Cornell next year, and they've got a third guy that's fielding Division I offers. They've only got 6 seniors, and their coach. Ruggles is a seasoned coach. He's only done a couple of years at this high school. Well, 6 years now as the head coach, and a year and a half before that as an assistant coach. But he started at the University of New Hampshire as an assistant coach under Chip Kelly. So they run an Oregon-style offense. You know, Kelly went on to fame at the University of Oregon. But he's coached at Harvard, several colleges, Central Connecticut State University. He brings a big-time mindset to that program, just like you see at Oaks Christian. And it wouldn't surprise me to see them win. They're reasonably balanced. They run a little bit more than they throw, but they can throw. And they've got a quarterback that's been with the system a couple of years, and I think Harvard-Westlake could win this game. It's a really tough. It might be the toughest matchup for any of our local teams outside of maybe Righetti.
Yeah, I think, you know, hitting on last week's game against San Ynez, I think it might be a good thing for St. Joseph. They really showed some life in that game, and they needed that after that kind of listless performance at Lompoc 2 weeks ago, losing 50-6 in that game. So they had a real tough game, a real emotional game against San Ynez, and clinching a playoff win, playoff berth with that win kind of sparked them a little bit in that close game. They had to make some plays late to beat San Ynez, so it kind of did spark them a little bit, and they might rally behind losing a guy like Mason Bealey, who's kind of a spark plug guy on that team, really fiery competitor, you know, boisterous, loud kind of guy. And you know, they're going to be without him on both sides of the ball, so maybe someone will step up and maybe they'll rally around not having Mason on the team, and that might spark them a little bit, and they can get a win over Harvard-Westlake. I think that might be a toss-up as it is right now, but the Knights are at home, so that might give them a little bit of a boost, and maybe they'll be playing again in the quarterfinals with the win, and maybe Mason Bealey can continue his high school career after getting injured against San Ynez.
And Coach Jim Chavallo said that it is a home game. They're playing on their turf field, and Harvard-Westlake plays on a grass field, so the kids are a little bit more used to it, although he did say that Harvard-Westlake might love that field and be even faster than they already are. But he's expecting a huge crowd, and you know, they talk about the 12th man. He's hoping that the emotion from the crowd feeds his kids, and his kids feed the emotion to the crowd, and that gives them a psychological boost. So they're all excited, and you know, they're working hard at practice. Everybody's in a good mood, so they're positive going into this one. And if they could pull off an upset here, because I think they're the underdog, they could possibly do it. Right now, I think Westlake is a little bit of a favorite, but the Knights could do it. I'm going to pick the Knights.
All right, Righetti is on the road. They're the lone at-large team to kind of land a playoff bid from our area in Division 8. They're going to play at Antelope Valley in Lancaster Friday night. Last I saw, that game was scheduled for 6 p.m. on a Friday, so the Warriors, that's their biggest road trip. They've traveled to Lompoc and Paso, Coach Ed Herman said, and that was their kind of long road trips of the year. So they're going to have to adjust to that, traveling to Lancaster. It's not an easy drive, not an easy trip out there, but they're 5-5 coming off the win over Pioneer Valley of 41-13. To finish with an even record and grab a playoff bid. I think the Warriors are going to have, you know, their hands full with Antelope Valley. They have a couple top recruits. Devin Williams has offers from Alabama, USC. He's a receiver, also played quarterback a bit last year. Jamal Bell, transferred from Pericles. He has some offers from Cal, I think UCLA. So they definitely have some top flight talent over there. But the Warriors kind of had an attitude, you know, nothing to lose. They made it this far. They're happy they're in the postseason. Not a lot of pressure on them. Probably not a lot of people would expect them to win. So I would expect them to play loose, play aggressive, and kind of play with that nothing, you know, to lose mindset out there in Lancaster Friday night at Antelope Valley. Lorenzo, what do you think the Warriors' chances are of advancing?
I don't like their chances. I mean, Antelope Valley, maybe they're not as stacked or as deep in talent compared to Lompoc, but they got some guys who are going to play on Saturdays. And one of their X factors, that outside linebacker, is a gentleman by the name of Khalil Johns, who actually had some of his better games against Matt Tago, a UCLA quarterback commit out in Quartz Hill. So, I mean, Righetti's been a nice story, and I'll already put it out there that Ed Herman definitely deserves some recognition for All-Area Coach of the Year with how he's turned that thing around. But, I mean, you kind of hit on the marks of, this team's playing as if they're just happy to be there, they're relieved, that sort of thing. Unfortunately, that does kind of haunt teams once the playoffs hit. So, Antelope Valley's a more seasoned team, so I think that right there already gives the Lopes the advantage.
All right, Kenny, what do you think the Warriors are going to do out there in Lancaster at Antelope Valley in the first round? Playing on the road against a talented team that is a higher seed. You give the Warriors much of a chance?
To be honest, no. I pretty much echo what Lorenzo feels. Ed Herman has done an outstanding job. I do think the nice Righetti story will end out there in the high desert. They face some good players here, but nothing of the caliber that those Antelope Valley players that you mentioned bring to the table for starters. I just think it will be too much for Righetti.
Elliot, what do you think the Warriors' chances are?
Not good. Lorenzo hit on it. They're happy to be there. I saw VCA beat Calvary Baptist last week, and Calvary Baptist was happy to be there. They have turned their program around. It was their first good season in years, and they weren't disappointed that they lost because they were happy to be there. And I'm wondering if that's the same thing we're going to see out of Righetti. They've done a great job this year. They had one win last year, 5-5 this year. We saw Santa Maria do the same kind of thing last year and take the next step this year. I look to Righetti to take the next step next year. And, Ed Herman's done a great job. He should be able to do a better job next year now that he's got the program moving in the right direction. But they got a 180-mile bus ride. They got an early game. They got to go through the desert to get there. So not only do they have to worry about their legs when they get out of the bus, I'm an old guy, so for me, a ride like that, I have to get out and stretch. They're young kids, but they're going to have to get out and get the blood circulating, and I'm just hoping that they don't think they've achieved enough, and this is a little bonus for getting this far, and then have a fun time, but not really come to play.
It's really a tale of two different teams because on Righetti's end, it's been a while since they've been in the playoffs. It's been a while since we've seen them this good. Antelope Valley, on the other hand, they're a more established program, and they're really a program that's been in the shadow of Paraclete out in that area. So, this is definitely a team that could actually even give Rio Mesa a run in that division.
Yeah, I think that Division 8 bracket is going to be a fun one to keep an eye on with Rio Mesa. I think still undefeated in the top seed in that division. One team that would love to be in the playoffs but is out once again is San Ynez. We saw it kind of Friday night with the 20-14 loss at St. Joseph. A lot of players did seem like they knew the writing was on the wall that they weren't going to make the postseason. And of course, come Sunday, the at-large teams were announced, and there were no at-large spots available in Division 10. So San Ynez was left out after their third-place finish in the FPL, losing to St. Joseph and Lompoc, I think by a combined 16 points. Tough break for San Ynez. Lorenzo, you were high on the Pirates all year. They lived up to, I'm guessing, your expectations, just were a little bit short against two of the better teams in the area. How do you think the San Ynez football players and the coaches feel right now, knowing that they're not in the postseason?
It's a word I can't say, but it's right there. They should be irate. I feel so bad for that senior class, especially Gabe Pendergrass. 3 years on varsity. He was on that team that went 7-3 and missed the postseason. Was on the last two teams that went 8-2 and still missed the postseason. Also feel bad for Dustin Gregg, who shattered so many school and county records, and he has to live with the fact that his final high school season saw his team go 8-2, miss the postseason. I feel bad for those seniors. I feel bad for Josh McClurg. He took a St. Ynez program from nothing. It was a mess out there. I'm sure you guys remember. And St. Ynez is like a household name in this area, and yet they still just can't seem to find a way to get into the playoffs. It seems like they're their one quality win was against Santa Maria, the Northern League champion. Unfortunately, Santa Maria is in a lesser division.
Yeah, San Ynez is in Division 10, so they play Lompoc in league, which is a Division 3 team. They play St. Joseph, a Division 5 team. So I don't know if the teams in Division 10 have to play those Division 3, Division 5 teams to make the playoffs. So it does seem like it's kind of a stacked deck against San Ynez with some of the teams that they have to be in league. Obviously, that's going to change next year with Santa Maria Valley Schools, San Luis Obispo County Schools moving to the Central section. It's going to be a whole different format, so I think things will kind of change for San Ynez if they can keep this going. 23-7 the last 3 years, no playoff appearances to show for it. I've heard some people say, well, then you got to beat St. Joseph and Lompoc. They had a chance to make it to get into the postseason, but I don't really agree with that argument. You shouldn't have to beat teams that are way 7 divisions higher than you. Lompoc's a powerhouse, probably a top 30, maybe 35 program in the state. So it's not really fair that San Ynez has to consistently win these games. And they were right there with Lompoc and St. Joseph both this year, just losing by a combined 16 points in those 2 games. So I think it's clear that San Ynez is a playoff team. You have teams like Crespi, I think, is 1-9 in the playoffs. I think you have an 0-10 team in the postseason this year, but you have an 8-2 team in San Ynez that is on the outside looking in for the 3rd year in a row.
In the Central section, Clovis East, which was 0-10, was invited to the Division I playoffs. And to the credit of Clovis East head coach, he said, "We're done."
Well, yeah.
San Ynez has got to be just irate. The record they've had the 3 years, but they beat Santa Maria, but Santa Maria won its league, 4-0 in the league, or 3-0 in that league because Mission Prep's gone. So they're in because they're league champion. Nipomo didn't have as good a record, but they're a second-place team in the league, so they get invites. But then you come to Righetti at 5-5, and you say, well, they got an invite, but they're in a different division. They're up in Division 8. But you think, what you said, there are only 2 losses to teams in much bigger divisions. Why couldn't they get a spot 3 years in a row, 2 years in a row, this year? They've had great records, and like you said, there are teams with inferior records that are invited to these playoffs. I don't know what axe they have to grind against San Ynez, but they should have been invited. In their division, there's no reason why they shouldn't have been one of the 16 teams. They said there were no at-large spots available. That's crazy. They don't have to take anybody but league champions. That's the only thing they actually have to do. After that, all bets are off. Yeah, it's traditional you take the first 2 teams, but you don't have to do that. And some of these leagues, like the Northern League, where there are only 4 teams, they don't guarantee a second-place team is going to get in. And there's a lot of small leagues around the southern section. I'm sure they could have found them a slot. I think they just got, I'm not going to use the word, but they they did a number on them, and I just think it's unfair. This team has shown that it's a quality team. Okay, maybe they can't beat Lompoc, but who does? Lompoc only gets Division III opponents in the playoffs. It's not Lompoc's fault that they're in a league that has Carrillo, Pioneer Valley, St. Joe, and San Ynez. That's where they're put. And of course, that'll change next year, but it's not next year at this point. And they'll still be, San Ynez will still be playing Lompoc and Carrillo. So they could get, nailed again. But I think that they've got a gripe. And when you look at some of the records that are in the playoffs, top to bottom, and then you see an 8-2 team year after year that is being overlooked, it just doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, some people are arguing against my claim that I think something is flawed or broken. I don't think you can argue with the fact a team goes 8-2 2 years in a row, 23-7 over that 3-year span, and doesn't make the playoffs. If you have that, then something is obviously wrong. You can't argue. Yeah. I don't think you can argue with the fact that a team goes 8-2. They beat Santa Maria, a playoff team. They beat Nipomo, a playoff team. They beat Carpinteria, a playoff team, 63-0. Carpinteria is only 2 divisions lower than them, so I don't think you can argue with the fact that something is wrong if you have a team going 8-2, losing to a Division III team by just 10 points, nearly beat a Division V playoff team at the playoff team's, St. Joseph by losing by 6 points. I think you can really argue that something must be wrong if San Ynez is consistently out.
I looked at all the records of the teams that did get in Division 10. I thought it was fair for all of them, except I would have had a debate with the Brentwood School getting in ahead of San Ynez. The Brentwood School finished second, but it was a 3-team league. I don't think you have to take 2 teams. From a 3-team league, Brentwood School did have a comparable record, 7-3. I think the problem was, I think the unfairness was not so much which teams got in Division 10 instead of San Ynez, but there were too many leagues in that team, so there weren't enough spots below second place available. It just should never happen that a 1-9 team gets in and an 8-2 team does not, regardless of divisions. I think they were just too. I think the CF Southern section, I think, does okay on the whole as far as plotting the divisions, but I think they just put too many leagues in Division 10, and that's what I think hurts Ynez.
To me, a 1-9 team that gets invited to the playoffs, that's almost the equivalent of a participation trophy. That's all it is. I mean, you're getting invited to have an extra game, and your season's pretty much going to end after that. So
yeah, you always play like the 1 or 2 seed when you're one of those guys, so you're just cannon fodder for those people, and that doesn't seem fair either to the other teams in the playoffs that have to play tougher teams in their first round. They shouldn't award a cupcake to somebody and then make everybody play more even matchups. But and I agree, Kenny hit on it. When you look at the way they break it down, the higher the divisions, the fewer teams are in that division. And then as you get down to the lower divisions, 10, 11, 12, there's like 60 teams in the division. So fewer of those division teams are going to get invited to the playoffs. If you're in Division 3, there's only 29 or something in that division. So half of that division, more than half of that division is guaranteed. The 16 of the 29 are going to get in, where San Ynez is at 16 of 59. So
that's where I think the problem
that they should find a way to balance those numbers out a little bit more, and then maybe if San Ynez is in a 32-team division, they would have a fairer shot. But they're finding artificial reasons to keep them out, and in some of these other divisions, really bad teams are getting in.
Now, Kenny mentioned Brentwood School being in a 3-team league. I think that's the Gold Coast League. Pericles actually is in that league. But here's the kicker, though, Kenny, and to all you guys. Pericles won the league. The second place team was Sierra Canyon, and then third was Brentwood. So you're telling me that 3 out of those 4 teams get into the playoffs, but yet the LPL only allows 2 teams.
Oh, it's a 4-team league.
Yeah, but Pericles again was the league champion. Then you get Sierra Canyon, but yet Brentwood still gets invited over San Ynez.
I don't know. Maybe some of those teams could just be freelance teams or something like that. Because I don't know. That's a really tough league, obviously, with Pericles and Sierra Canyon in there. But I don't know. Something's got to work out where some of these teams who deserve to be in are in, and some of those teams who win 1 game or maybe no games are making it.
The hard part is San Ynez can try again next year, but a lot of the top players on that team are seniors.
Yeah.
On this team, are seniors. So. Yeah. It could be hard.
Yeah, it is a bit of a transition year there for the Pirates, but I think Josh McClurg has proven that he can win with a new cycle of players. He went 7-3, over 2 seasons ago, and it was pretty much a new group that they went 16-4 the last year.
He did inherit a real mess out there that he turned around.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see San Ynez in the postseason next year with the different format, with so many area schools moving to the central section and the leagues changing a little bit. We'll move on to Nipomo, another team with the home game Friday night. They host Golden Valley. Lorenzo, you caught up with some of the players yesterday. What are their feelings heading into this matchup? I think it's a tough matchup. They are at home, but it's a pretty tough matchup for them against Santa Clarita Golden Valley.
Well, Nipomo's ticked. Nipomo's ticked over the fact that they had a 19-point lead against Santa Maria. They blew that lead. They're at home. And, I mean, they let it be known that they had a full padded practice on Tuesday, and they got after it. That's how mad they are. Now, this Golden Valley team, it is an animal, though. I mean, yeah, they're 5-5, but they did have a tough schedule. They also played most of their games without the Gabriel Floyd, a transfer from Augustus Hawkins, who's currently committed to USC. But, I mean, Tony Judge let it be known. It's like, we have to get 11 guys on this guy. We have to get 11 guys, not one guy, 11 guys to stop this dude, because he's going to get the ball early and often. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe an upset Nipomo team can have the advantage in this game, but I feel like talent-wise, Golden Valley still has the edge.
Yeah, the Titans are 4-6. They lost their first 5 games of the year, won 4 in a row, and then lost to Santa Maria Friday night, blowing that 19-point lead. Kenny, you were on hand for that one. What is the state of the Nipomo football team right now, and what do you think they'll do Friday night at home in the playoffs?
Motivation-wise, they'll be fine. Their physical task is going to be very hard. Golden Valley plays in a very tough foothill league for starters, which they were respectful in. Lorenzo mentioned their star that they hadn't been with all season, but now are with. I just think I think this is just going to be too much for Nipomo to take on. They've had a nice year, but I think this will be too hard for them to take on. I think Golden Valley will win. I don't think it'll go to the wire.
Yeah, Nipomo's had an up and down year, and then it was all encapsulated in that one game against Santa Maria, up and down. And now that the competition gets tougher, and I think they'll, as they say, acquit themselves well, but I don't think they're going to be able to match up with Golden Valley. I think, it's nice they got a home game, and that means Golden Valley will get a home game in the second round, so they're probably really thrilled to be coming to the coast with our cooler weather, and after they put away the Titans, they get to go home for the second round, which will help their playoff chances, but I just don't see Nipomo pulling this one out. I see them scoring, I see them being competitive, but falling short.
Now, we do have 2 8-man teams alive in the postseason. VCA, Orchid Academy are both in the quarterfinals, are both on the road Friday. Elliot, can you kind of give us an update on their chances, and what do you expect out of the 2 8-man teams Friday night? Okay,
VCA is the easier one. We were talking about records. 8-man's a different animal. There's 31 teams in their 2 divisions. There's only 15 in the Division II of the 8-man. So 6 of the 31 teams have losing records, and 2 of them come in at 500. So 8 of the 31 teams are mediocre at best, but it's 8-man. There just aren't that many, so San Ynez can't really be compared to them. VCA is going to be easier. They beat Calvary Baptist 58-14. Hesperia Christian beat St. Michael's Prep 58-30, so that sounds good. Sounds like their offenses are evenly matched. And VCA can score a lot of points, but Hesperia Christian at 7-1 is the number 1 overall seed. They're on the road. It's 180 miles or something over there. I just don't see that Valley Christian's going to win it. I think they'll be competitive and it'll be a fun game. But I think Hesperia Christian's going to win it. Now, the other one, though, this is a revenge game, if you will. Orchid Academy just slaughtered Desert Christian 63-8, and the Chadwick School pounded Riverside County Education Academy 56-28 last week. They played last year, Chadwick and Orchid Academy, at Chadwick. That's where they'll be. It's in Palos Verdes Peninsula, south of Los Angeles, off the 405. So it's a good long ride for them, but they've made it before. They know the field. They know the team. Chadwick has lost its 2 big runners from last year. They had a kid named Benson and another one, EJ Devon, Nick Benson. They graduated and they put up about 300 yards on them last year, and they just couldn't stop them. But last year, the Spartans didn't have their quarterback. He was out injured for that game, and now he's back and he's healthy. So they're looking to turn the tables. And this is one, Chadwick is 9-0 right now, and they're a really good team, but they basically run 5 plays. They have 4 running plays. They've got their 3rd string running back from last year is now their number 1 runner, and pretty much they hand him the ball, and they have different looks of quarterback options and just straight handoffs or bootleg and a pitch. But basically they have 4 running plays and 1 passing play. They only have the same 2 guys that run the ball are the two top receivers. So you keep an eye on them, and Orchid Academy is really good at swarming to the ball. They got 3 guys with over 60 tackles. They got another 5 guys with 50 tackles. They just swarm to the ball. So their defense is on its toes. They're reasonably healthy. They've only got 1 player that's out, but Eddie Lundgren has stepped up. He was the number 2 running back. He's moved into the number 1 spot. And their quarterback, Darren Miller, has over 1,200 yards rushing, so he's the number 1 option, but Lundberg is great. They got Dominic Nattel. I think this year they've got the balance, and they've got a year's experience. They've played these guys before, but Chadwick isn't 9-0 for nothing, and they're playing on the top of that little mountain over there overlooking Los Angeles. It's a great location. Although you could fall off the side of the mountain if you...
Or an earthquake could cause it to sink.
Run the wrong way, that's a pretty steep drop-off on the edge of that field, although they do have a fence, so that the ball could be gone. But I'm looking at this could be one of those games that Orchid Academy, remember, they played Kate, and they won 72-68 and needed a last play stop to prevent the loss, where they would have lost 74-72. This could be one of those where they go back and forth, and whoever can force the 1 punt will get the extra possession and win this game. So this could be fun. I'm going to go to this one. This could be just the most entertaining game. But Eightman's like that. If you look at the scores, they have scores in the 50s and 60s all the time, and they just run up and down the field. Orchid Academy thinks that they've got the horses this year. They got Darren Miller. Last year they had one of the Carpenter twins, wide receivers, those 6'7" kids that are over at Hancock now, filling in a quarterback. They don't have that this year. They got their horse running the show. So I'm looking at Orchid Academy get a little payback.
All right, that's all we got for this week. Be sure to check out our coverage Friday night and Saturday morning. We'll be all over the Central Coast covering games. Elliot will be down south for Orchid Academy's afternoon game. It's scheduled for 2 p.m. right now. But, of course, also on Saturday, Hancock has a big home game against Citrus Valley. They can lock up an outright league championship, I believe it is. So if you want to see some good JUCO football on Saturday, 1 p.m. start time at Hancock, they can wrap up a league championship, something they haven't had in a while there. And, things are looking up for the Hancock.
Sparty Eames is last year.
Yeah.
But they've done a fine job this year. They've beaten some tough teams, come up with a variety of ways to win. They have persevered despite not having the best luck injury-wise. They've done a nice job.
That's all we got for this week. Thank you guys for watching 805 Sports Talk.